I've been really clear that I feel great about Donovan Jackson as a guard generally, but as a Viking, he's also a really good fit. Let me explain on Locked On Vikings.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. I finally watched tape, everybody. I got around to it, okay? I got a little sick. I got a little tired all the time. We're doing better. And so I actually got the chance to sort of organize my thoughts in a detailed way around Donovan Jackson. I made a Patreon video. That should be up at some point today if I didn't forget to click upload. If not, it'll be up this week for sure. So that has finally happened. It's at patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. I'm also going to make all of my pre-draft stuff free to watch. So if you're not a Vikings fan and you're watching this for some reason, Ohio State fan maybe or something, there's videos on some of the random people that like the Vikings could have drafted, like Derek Harmon or Malachi Starks. That will all be free to watch now. But let's hone in on some guard play. I was pretty clear about the first reason why I love Donovan Jackson as a guard, and that reason is flexibility. Both physical flexibility, but also like the idea of flexibility. The ability to go through the process of like over the course of a play, be able to go from one situation to an adapting another situation and like adjust where he is at, which takes a certain like quickness and athleticism for a big guy, but also a processing ability that I don't think is like a matter of experienced or not experienced. I think it's sort of an innate, like, can you think that fast? Can you take in information and react that fast? Or do you have to sit and think and process? And if you do have to sit and think and process, then you have to teach that person the inputs and the outputs, right? I think every human brain can be trained to respond to some input with an output, right? Like Pavlovian style. Everybody can be trained if they see the color red to stick their tongue out. Anybody, that can happen to any human brain, assuming that that part of it is functional. That sort of innate ability to process on the fly and react is not to be taken for granted. And I think Donovan Jackson really has it. There's a great rep against, I want to say it was Michigan State. They are shooting an exotic at him. I say it's an exotic. I would call it Odie. That is the Belichick word for it. But it's two defenders rush two gaps, and then a linebacker comes in to take on a third. So like A gap, B gap get rushed here. And it's a 3-man blitz thing. But basically you have two guys rushing to the left to try to pull linemen that way. And then you have a linebacker coming in trying to take advantage of the hole that creates. And it's attacking Donovan Jackson's gap. This is a blitz that is meant to confuse him. And what is difficult about this is that there's two different blitzers that come. There's a linebacker that comes in that, by my understanding of zone protection rules, Donovan Jackson is not allowed to help with and should not get distracted by. He lets him go. The running back takes him. And he's still handling the guy that has just crossed over his face and is handing that guy off to the center, basically. Once he's handed that guy off to the center, he can put his eyes back onto the secondary and look for additional blitzers, which there is one, and he is coming quickly. So you have not a millisecond to react, get your hips back square, and get in there and get to the blitzer and pick him up. And he does it beautifully. So the whole blitz gets picked up. Now the center's got to do his job, the running back's got to do his job. It's a team game. But it's a really great example. It's in the video of the kind of flexibility that I'm talking about. Over a 4-second play, which I think is about the average, things are going to change. Dynamics are going to change. And sometimes they're going to change late and delayed. The Vikings really struggled with that last year. I think back in particular to the Cardinals game. Cardinals made really good work of this, where the blitzes that they would send, and I think the Rams took a page out of their book in the playoffs, and that led to part of why the Vikings gave up 9 sacks in that game. It was a lot of delayed guys, a lot of additional blitzers, and then a lot of just like, you got 6 blockers, we got 7. We're just sending it and making Sam Darnold act quicker than he was able to act. And it just kind of didn't work. You remember that Cardinals game? Like, they won it, but it was like pretty bleak for a lot of it. And you know, it was this big protection problem. So, which I made a Patreon video about, by the way, breaking down some of those blitzes the Cardinals sent and why they worked. So that strategy was a counter to the long developing nature of the Vikings offense, right? We like to sit back, run big routes, big long post route, Jordan Addison, big old 20-yard dig for Jefferson, big, tight ends running down the field. We love to hold the ball, and we trusted Sam Darnold to make the time when he needed to make the time and to be patient about it. And sometimes Sam Darnold would be slow about that anyways, which exacerbated the problem, but it was very much an offense that, you would watch on TV and you go, oh my God, why isn't he throwing it? And then you would go look at the tape where you could actually see when the routes were breaking off. And that sack was coming in before anything broke off. Like 4 or 5 times last year, I came away from the game going, wow, Sam Darnold really looked slow, like a slow processor. And then it would turn on the tape and be like, actually, he was waiting for things to break open. And this whole offense was going slow. So it's just a long developing offense. And by the way, second year QB in there, I'm not fully expecting him to read the thing like as fast as Joe Burrow does, and make decisions like he's Drew Brees. Like we probably are still going to have some of that problem. We got a young quarterback, so you gotta let the play go long. It's just gonna be what the Vikings do. It's Kevin O'Connell. I don't think is going to decide to not be aggressive and suddenly run this thing like it's Oregon in 2022. And that means that your line is going to have to hold up for a while. And the initial block is one thing. Winning on the initial block is probably the best way to do it. Christian Darrisaw got at this. Absolutely excellent at it. He could hold up for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, or 7 seconds because he's going to get his hands on the guy and win. Will Fries actually think is really good at it too. So, I'm really excited about that sign. Man, I'm stoked on this O-line. Holy crap! I really hope they don't suck because I'm happy. At least I'm happy in theory. I at least agree with the decisions. We'll see how they play out. But with Donovan Jackson, that hip flexibility is key to being able to win a rep on the outside and then continue to win it as second and third efforts come in. You're a D lineman, right? You try to get to the outside of your blocker and he stops you up. He beats your hands. He gets his hands, whatever, right? He stops you up. What are you going to do? You're going to cross to the inside if you're allowed to. If there's not like a blitzer in that gap instead, you got to keep it open. You're going to spin. You're going to try to stack and you're going to try to push pull. You're going to try to convert to power. You're going to try to change the angle. That's a really, really important thing for D linemen. If your angle isn't working, then change the angle, and he might not be set up that well to defend that. And you basically need to force that guard to have flexibility, both the idea of flexibility and actual physical flexibility. So Donovan Jackson has that idea. And so the main point that I'm making here, and I'm going to talk about other stuff with Donovan Jackson for the rest of the show too. So we got a lot more to talk about, but the main thesis here is the Vikings need a guy to hold up for a long time, which gives defenders a long time to do second and third moves. And Donovan Jackson has the tool set to handle those second and third moves in particular, those changes in the angle, because he can change his own angle really well as well. And it's going to help to not have these moments where, you held up for 3 seconds, but you didn't hold up for the fourth and it was a sack. There were a lot of those last year. And while it's still not fair to ask the O-line to hold up for 7 seconds, hopefully this group will be able to do that a little bit more often. But the scheme fit stuff doesn't end there with Donovan Jackson. There's also some of the stuff we have to talk about in zone, as well as one of the drawbacks to Donovan Jackson that gets brought up a lot, why he does it and why I think I'm okay with it. So that's all coming up on Locked On Vikings. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and go like, oops, uh-oh? Look, sometimes we get a little carried away, dining out, ordering delivery, online shopping, going out and entertainment, whether it's tickets or buying games, whatever it is. It's super easy to lose track of your money, okay? Happens to everybody. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your own personal CFO, but it's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, and you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. So if you have apps, one to track your investments, one to track your budget, one to help organize or whatever, Monarch Money is all of that in one instead of juggling all of that stuff. Look, you might not realize how much you're spending on something like food delivery until Monarch Money lays it out for you, and you can make the lifestyle adjustments that you want and see where you can cut back if you're trying to save. Plus, it makes it easy to manage money with a partner. If you you can track shared personal accounts with somebody, and so make sure that everybody's on the same page and there's no drama. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. Moving along with this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. God, I love talking about O-line. These are my favorite shows, next to maybe the Everyman series is, because I really love the technical details of O-line. And among those technical details are the particular footworks that we want to look at when we're talking about outside zone. So the hip flexibility is going to come up here again, but outside zone is, obviously a staple for the Vikings, or they would run what you would call mid zone, but for the guard, it's roughly the same. By the way, actually, let me talk about this real quick. So there's a question I've gotten in a couple of mailbags. I think I answered it and then deleted it, or maybe I did answer it. But the idea of Donovan Jackson playing tackle a little bit, if Christian Darrisaw isn't ready for week 1, coming off of his big knee injury, I think that that's a tremendously terrible idea. He is not good at tackle. I don't think that Donovan Jackson should be viewed as like a guard tackle hybrid just because he played a half a season at backup quality college tackle in a pinch for Ohio State in his last year. I know that's like where he's coming off of college was at tackle, and he kind of finished college as tackle. But that dude is a through and through guard. His kick step is super, super slow. He'll get destroyed by any speed rusher. I just don't think it's a thing unless it's an emergency situation. Like, then you got to do what you got to do. And that might be one of the things that like people ding him for is like, well, yeah, but he was like pretty slow as a tackle. Which is totally fair. And if you evaluated him as like a guard tackle hybrid, I think you kind of I don't think that he is good enough at it to make it worth the like points you would give somebody for position versatility. I think it maybe did more harm than good to consider him that way. And if you consider him as purely a guard, I think you get a lot more excited, which is what I do, because I don't think the Vikings are going to use him as a guard. Even if they do use him for 2 weeks while we wait for Christian Darrisaw to come back from his injury, like that's 2 games, whatever, long term, this dude is a guard's guard. Anyways, so run game wise, to me, the point of Donovan Jackson is pass pro. And we're going to circle back to pass pro later in the show when we talk about one of the things that like basically everybody who didn't like him cited on their like the weaknesses. But the run game fit is still crucial here, right? Even though like this is a pass protection move. This is a keep JJ McCarthy clean move, which is great, right? Like we've done a lot. We've covered a lot of O-linemen on this show where the point was, hey, this guy's a run blocker. Maybe he could use a little bit of help in pass protection, but really he's a run blocker, right? Like we did a ton of that with Spielman and Mike Zimmer. So this is different. This guy's about pass pro, and the run blocking, there's no problem with it. It's just not like the thing that really pops off the tape to me. But when we do outside zone, I'm looking at specifically the footwork, the first couple of steps. I think about like the scoop blocks. So like the Grim Reacher, right? You watch Garrett Bradbury do these. He was awesome at these, and he still is. Where he would actually get his helmet and his pads all the way out. He would be like tilted at an angle, and then he would kind of bring his feet back underneath him because he had really quick feet. So he could really, really get out there and like reach and get a hand on somebody and then bring his feet underneath with him and then be able to seal somebody off. And he could cover a lot of distance on a reach that way. Donovan Jackson ain't quite doing that, but it ain't bad. His feet are quick enough, but he doesn't get a lot of distance step to step to step. So it's a lot of shorter, choppier steps, and that's a good way to move around when you're an O-lineman because those short, choppy steps are strong and powerful. So you're never going to be on a bad base. Versus if you're really, sprinting, you're going to get caught like in the middle of your step cycle and then not have a great base. He's really good at staying on a good base, but it doesn't quite cover as much distance, but it's plenty to do what you would typically ask a guard in outside zone, like reach a 3-tech to your play side, right? You're sitting there at guard. There's a defender to your play side, and you got to get out and reach him. He can do that. There are examples of him doing that in basically every game. Plus the combos. So the way that Ohio State will do this, and most teams, zone is pretty universal in its like core fundamentals, and the differences only really start to branch off when you like zoom in on more details. But the way that Ohio State would do it is whoever can get to the linebacker gets to the linebacker. They don't wait for the linebacker to come to them, which is, I guess, a differentiating factor. Some teams will like want more patience to stay on the D-line, make sure the D-line isn't penetrating or doing anything, and let the linebacker choose their gap, and then you peel off and get him, versus guys that want you to basically give a hand to the D-lineman and then get up to the linebacker, take the fight to him. Schools of thought. For Ohio State, it's the latter. And that means that you have basically two jobs as a combo blocker. First off, you have to block the defensive tackle in front of you, and you're probably in a double with your teammate. If you're the one getting the linebacker, you have to help that teammate overtake, right? So if you and I are blocking, right, and then there's somebody in between us, and I got to get up to the linebacker, you basically have to get to where I am so you can seal him off play side, and then I'm getting to the linebacker. Play side guy gets to linebacker. And that kind of makes sense for why, if you think like angles, right? A linebacker is faster than a lineman, always. And so I need as much head start as possible. So the play side guy is going to go up. If the backside guy goes up, he doesn't have enough of a head start, put it that way. So play side guy is going to go up, which means the backside guy has to get to the play side of the defensive tackle. Tough stuff. I'm going to help him. So that's one thing Donovan Jackson's going to do. Really strong arms. Really strong upper body. I bet he's a bench press maven. I bet he's a weight room maven. Great stuff. So that's really helpful without slowing him down too much. And then he's got to get up and into the second level, find that linebacker and go get him. And what's really cool is if he does set up wrong, like that's really hard. That's the thing. Like even the good linemen will whiff on those a whole bunch. And you'll get, 8-yard runs that could have been touchdowns if that was the block and nobody's mad about it. Because you just don't expect a lineman to get every single one of those, right? You get up, you do your best on a guy who's quicker than you and faster than you do your best to catch up, right? So if somebody does manage to cross his face and get across him in the way that you kind of don't want in that play, he's got the hip flexibility. This is where it comes back in. He's got the hip flexibility to immediately change the goal. If my goal is to keep you on the backside of the play, I am the wall between backside and play side. And if I can seal you into the backside, you'll never make the tackle, right? Great, I win my block. If you do get across me and now you are play side of me, now the goal flips into, okay, now I just need to wash you too far play side and force you to overrun this. And, get hands under you, go. And that recovery is a really important thing for me. A really important thing for me in O-line is what you do in a non-ideal situation. You don't get everything to look like a Senior Bowl drill in the NFL. Just not realistic. So what you do in those situations where it's better or worse, no. So what you do in those situations to take a bad situation and either make it better, mitigate the damage, take your L's and either turn them from uppercase L's to lowercase L's, or turn them into dubs entirely if you can really get there, is I think what separates the men from the boys a little bit. And for Donovan Jackson, his tool there is that hip flexibility. That ability to go, hey, I'm blocking you to the right, and then nope, I'm blocking you to the left because you got across my face, and now I'm trying to wash you out. And then you just trust the running back to kind of sort out that mess and say, oh, the gap isn't there the way I thought it would be, but that gap is, so I'm going to take that. That's the running back's job, and you have to trust your teammate there. And, with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, a couple of guys that are pretty good at that, and I don't think that Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason are going to give us too many problems there either. Give the running back a cutback lane. That's the best you can do when the guy flies across your face because he's way faster than you because he weighs 100 pounds less than you. That plus the footwork of being able to get across, and while there are times where he's a little too slow, we saw that versus Penn State, and yeah, he was playing tackle, so some of those weren't super like translatable to what he's going to do in the Vikings. Not all of them were that kind of play. Sometimes he was protecting an interior gap, or it was a run block where it was just like a blitzer coming up and he just couldn't quite get there. But that's just that, he's not taking long, like lopey steps. He's short even for a guard. He's like 6'3", which I think is great. I actually think being on the shorter end for a guard is okay. Because that actually gives you nice leverage, like low man wins, right? And so it's easier if you're shorter in a way. I think on the interior, I kind of like him 6'2", 6'3", and even though that's like 20th percentile height, as long as you have the stock and the weight, and you're not just small, right? You short, stocky bowling ball types. I love that. That's what Donovan Jackson is. Although it's kind of funny, the like presser, he's taking a picture next to Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, and he's like their same height. And those guys are both really tall. Like Kwesi played basketball at Princeton. Like they're tall guys, but it's really funny to be like next to your pencil pushing GM, and you're the same size as that guy. Plus 150 pounds, but still funny stuff. But that's not really, none of that, like the short thing. I don't think people really held that against Donovan Jackson, because I think short equals leverage is pretty well known. But rather it was what he does with his hands. And what he does with his hands is something that I agree with all those people that I don't like it, but I don't know if I hold it against him as much. Let me explain next on Locked On Vikings. I'm going to call this next part the hug technique. I don't think that that's the official name for it, but it's the name that I learned when I first heard about this, which came from a Brett Coleman video many, many, many years ago about why the Packers always get away with holding. If you remember thinking that many years ago, man, the Packers hold every play. Why do they get away with it? And it wasn't ref bias. There was a real technique to, by the letter of the law, holding, but doing so in a way that's never going to actually get a flag. And they do this all over the league. It certainly wasn't unique to Green Bay. They just kind of got famous for it, I think, because NFC North fans complained about their refs. But it's everywhere. And they teach this at Ohio State too. I haven't seen like a clinic or anything that tells me that, but you can tell. You can tell the way the tight ends block, the guards, the tackles, etc. Everybody uses the hug technique. So what's the hug technique? Well, how you punch, I'm going to say there's 3 different styles that I'm familiar with, and the hug technique is one of them, but I'll tell you the other 2 real quick. One is the double under. That's where you take your hands and you basically try to grab them by the lapel, grab them kind of under the armpits, maybe a little bit, maybe further inside, and you try to lift them up, right? This was really popular 5-10 years ago. It's a little bit less popular now. But it's a nice, your elbows are tucked inside. It's very solid. It's not rangy particularly. You kind of have chicken wing arms, but it's going to be really solid. It's going to be a good leverage position. And like, think about it, right? Like if you're going to curl a dumbbell, where do your elbows go? Right to your side, right? And that's one of the strongest muscles that you have especially when used in conjunction with like your core, squats, glutes, all that stuff, or squats, your thighs, your glutes, all that stuff, your quads. And So that's the double under, right? Two arms coming in from underneath, really hard to parry, really easy to get your hands on somebody, but not particularly rangy. And then there's like playing it a little bit longer. This is the Ed Ingram move, and if that alarms you, it's also the Will Fries move. It can work and not work for different reasons. There's pros and cons. This is all just styles, right? It's all rock, paper, scissors. Some people win with rock, some people lose with rock. But this is a way Will Fries loves to do it, which is you take one arm and like really try to make first contact and jab, and then you bring the other one in second. It's kind of more of a 1-2 punch deal, and the best linemen can use both. And then you have the hug technique, where you are doing both hands at a time, but you're going out and around. So you swing your hands way out wide where they cannot be countered because they're coming in from a wild angle. But the downside, as you can probably guess, is that your chest is wide open. So if somebody wants to do, say, their double under, they have total free access to grab you anywhere you want on the chest. You're totally undefended. But what you do is you get in, you get your hands right on their shoulder pads, and then essentially lift up from there, and then hopefully you can stand them up, get rid of their whole base of power, right? If someone's standing up straight, they can't use their legs, they're not going to be powerful. And then if they try to get outside of your frame, you can basically hold them right there. And while by the letter of the law that is holding, it never looks like holding, because your arms never go outside of your own frame. Once you've made contact, it's basically never going to get called. That's the sort of the threshold that refs are taught to call holding or not, is if you can see the forearm, you call it basically. You'll never see the forearm doing this, so it never gets called. So that one is the one that Donovan Jackson uses, the hug technique, and that everybody at Ohio State does. So that's the first reason why it doesn't alarm me, is because that is just what they do at Ohio State. And it doesn't work as well in the NFL when your opponents are a lot stronger. So here's the sort of prerequisite to running the hug technique, right? If you're going to give up your whole chest and your whole torso, you better be able to anchor against a bull rush that comes at you, without your arms basically helping at all, because your arms are going to be up on someone's shoulder pads and you don't really have a lot. You're going to be like pushing down on them. You don't really have a lot of muscle there. So you better be able to anchor with like only your base. So the best hug technique, David Bakhtiari, was phenomenal at this. He could absolutely always anchor with just his base, and he had no trouble with giving up his whole chest, because he could always basically get his feet behind him and anchor. And Donovan Jackson has that too in the college ranks for whatever it's worth. But it's a little more difficult to get away with that in the NFL. NFL players are just stronger than college players, right? So it's going to take a little bit more power, and there are people in the NFL that can get away with it. Remains to be seen if that can work for Donovan Jackson still. And I'm skeptical. It's just, that's hard. And there's no reason to live like that every single play. It's nice to have it be part of your repertoire, but I would much rather see Donovan Jackson try to play long a little bit. Now, he doesn't have the best reach, right? I think he's got short arms, if I recall. Yeah, 33 and a half. That's fine for a guard. And actually a longer wingspan as a wider guy, especially height adjusted, but he's still like a short guard. So playing long might not be his move all that often, and I would love to see him instead be a little bit more of a double under guy. By the way, easiest change in the world to make. You just say, hey, do your hands like this from now on. After 3 days of practice, you'll be fine with it. And it's just about, it's not like a habit that needs breaking. It's like telling a pass rusher to use a rip more than a swim. It's like, well, it's just adjust your ratio a little bit. It's fine. So that's the second reason why I'm not worried about it, is if the Vikings even do want to change it, which is not guaranteed that they would want to. The hug technique is a devil's bargain, just like anything is. They all have their pros and cons. Otherwise, everyone would do everything the same. So if they do want to change that about him, it's really not that hard to change that, and it's a little bit of assembly required, but it's a pretty low octane one. It's not like saying, wow, he doesn't know how to like pass set at all. He doesn't know how to punch at all. And like, for example, Gray Zabel would just lay his hands. And I hated this about him. This is part of why I had Gray Zabel way lower on my board than I had Donovan Jackson. Because my board is a Vikings board, right? So I see both of these guys as they're going to play guard for us. Maybe Gray Zabel would have played center, but I never looked at Gray Zabel as a tackle. I don't think he should be a tackle anyways. But like, the way that he used his hands was just totally unsustainable. You just got to like completely reteach that. For Donovan Jackson, you don't have to reteach it. And the way you would want to reteach it is like pretty easy to teach. So all in all, there are so many other little things that I'm excited about with Donovan Jackson, with his technical pass pro, the way that his feet, those short choppy steps that he takes come in handy a lot. There are a lot of situations where that helps him to create a win, to be really fluid and mobile, and to keep up with defenders that are giving second and third pass rush moves really late in the down. That will come up. If you're looking for one takeaway here, it's the one that I started with. Donovan Jackson is good late in the down. When the quarterback is holding the ball forever, he has got the tool set to enable that, to let the quarterback hold the ball forever. And that fits with this offense so well. This was far from a comprehensive review. My attempt at a comprehensive review is the Patreon video, but I know even that doesn't get everything that I would want to say about him. But we'll get to it, right? We'll cover him. I mean, he's the first round rookie. I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of reviews of like specifically him. I'm going to try to keep doing these for the draft picks now that I can like really take my time and I have the energy to dive back into tape. So we're going to keep trying to do this on Locked On Vikings as well as the Everyman series. I've got some guest stuff maybe next week. I will see you all for all that. And as always, Skol.